So it used to be when I was a kid, these rock overhangs went nearly completely over the road. They were not this tall. You can see they've all been rebroken. Because a truck and a trailer, see, we had two cars stacked on the trailer and the truck. And going through here, we got stuck under it and got wedged. And the road was much more narrow. Well, another 1.5 feet more narrow. And like this area here, you can see how low the rocks used to be. Well, we got wedged in there, and so we'd back up that long truck and trailer. We had 6 cars being taken home, big old cars, with an old 1965 maybe Chevy truck. So we had to go right up to the edge of the narrow road. And I would hang out the passenger window and spot and tell my dad if the tires were on the road or not. And we'd have to inch until the tires were hanging off the road to get that load of cars scraping hard against those rocks to make it through here to get home. We were in an air-conditioned truck. The cab was cut in half on top. The gas tank was cut in half. Rear window was gone. Smell of gas was pretty bad. And I was pretty cold because we used my rain and gasoline soaked Levi jacket, rolled up and pushed into the cut in the gas tank to keep the gas from sloshing out. I never cried, but boy, my guts hurt from the stress of trying to stay alive on one of Dad's everyday adventures. What a day that was. Wonder what my mom thought about all that. I could tell you a lot of stories about take a kid to work day with my dad. Seemed like every single time we just had a little bit of a chance of making it home alive. But he just turned 80 and he's still alive and still doing wild stuff. You know, we should have got some pictures back there in the town of Swissholm. There's this little building that we just looked at a few minutes ago. It was the village market. Back then, Swissholm, most of the houses were just beautiful replicas of a Swiss village. It was a bunch of people from Switzerland that got together with their common interests and built this most beautiful little village with the brightest of colors. One of the things that just about every house had on it, and barn, was the bright white crisscross lattice work on their houses and buildings. And very beautiful to look at. And it was a very, very clean community. No litter. Just full of honest, decent people. So Dad had a wrecking yard in Veneta, and he got a call from the little mayor of Swissholm and said, "We have a resident who has passed away and who collected 56 Buicks and a Cadillac, and we are hoping that you would come and haul them off for the benefit of our community." And so he said there were 5 56 Buicks and 1 56 Cadillac. And so Dad went out in our backyard where the greenhouse is now, and he cut down 2 fir trees, 6 inches diameter on the base, left the bark on them, cut them off at about 18 feet tall, and put a piece of pipe with a steel plate on it and bolted through. And he made this A-frame boom for the very back of his truck. And my mom packed us a lunch and a thermos of hot chocolate and a thermos of coffee and sent us on our way. Dad had stretched the frame of that truck out. It was just a regular 3/4 ton pickup. I think it was a 1965 Chevrolet. He cut the frame in half, moved the rear axle back a long ways, and I think the bed on it was about 16 feet long. In between, to fill in the big gap in the frame that he cut, he used, I think it was 4x6 wooden beams. Used, of course. That means they're tested. And he bolted it all together, and he had about 4 different drive lines all connected together, bolted to the wooden cross members. And then he built a flatbed on it, and he put a powerful winch on the front. On the car hauling trailer, the trailer was very long, homemade, made by somebody else, I believe. And you could stack cars too high, bumper to bumper, and get 4 cars on the trailer. So he decided that he needed a lot of weight on the truck so that the trailer didn't overpower the truck in a corner. So he started with taking a 56 Buick, and he lifted it up and backed up, and he planted it right on top of the 56 Cadillac and chained them together as one tall car. Then he made 2 stacks of 56 Buicks, and then he would lift up the stacks and back up and put them on the trailer. Then he tied a chain over the top, down the length of them, of both stacks, and then he tied the stacks to the trailer. So now the trailer was tightly and properly tied down with 4 cars on it. Then the last step, I said it out of line, the last step was to set a 56 Buick on top of the Cadillac. After that, he was going to pull the stack up on top of the truck with a winch and then hook up to the trailer. But where it all went wrong, yeah, this is the area where the road is narrow, and I had to spot keeping the tires on the edge. And the weather was much like this. It was just a rainy winter day. And I think this is the area where the truck was bound up, and we were already on the edge. And so he just had to keep ramming it and bending the sheet metal and chipping the rock until we could get through. I really didn't think we were going to make it. Look how narrow this is. This road right now has been widened. It's 9 feet wide, and it is about 100 feet down to the water. You can see where the rock has been chipped off. That rock used to go over the road. They've chipped it way back. See, the edge of the road was out there. You had to go out on that where the grass is and then back to get around this rock. But see, originally this was a horse trail. And then when the railroad went in, this road went in to service the railroad, but it was very narrow. But this is how the postmaster would get the mail that came in off the ships to Eugene. Soon after, the Cascade locks were built up the Willamette River about halfway to Portland, and then mailboats could get to Eugene that way. Our old friend Max Weiss, W-E-I-S-S, he was the final postmaster to use this route, which was called Route F, which was not much more than an Indian horse trail. But this is the way that he would come in and make his mail drops to Walton, Alma, Notai, Elmira, Veneta, and finally to Eugene. He was an old friend of ours, and he passed away, I think it was in 1984 or 1985. He was still teaching blacksmithing at LCC the year he passed away. And I was the only student signed up that year, and he passed away just before the class started. But he's told stories about spending the night up here stuck in mud up to the axles in his Model T trying to haul the mail. He said the road was so bad in the worst parts of winter that the neighbors kept a team of horses here to pull his car out. So he would put his car in neutral, I guess, and the horse team would pull his Model T through the mud, get him back on the road. So you noticed we crossed back over the train tracks again, left the mountain behind us. We're going to cross the train tracks one more time, and they will go diagonal across the water. And that's where we will go over the covered bridge and get back on 126. I'm not sure if the other side, the original end of this road is still open or not. It was in pretty bad shape. Turned into a rough neighborhood. Even rougher than what we've seen already. And it was blocked off either by the residents or the state. There was a couple that lived out here. I think their names were Tom and Karen. And they were part of my parents' bluegrass band many years ago. And look at this beautiful old train trestle. Speaking of the wooden part, this is how narrow it was.
Wow.
You know how hard it was to get through here with a 4-car trailer back in those days? That's all original sheet metal, but you'll notice the sheet metal is worn down to the wooden post. That's from trailers and trucks getting stuck in it. Isn't that beautiful that they could build something like that in 1907 and it's still standing with today's giant trains running across it? See if you can see the bridge, the year on that bridge. It's cut out in the very top. It should be a 06 or an 07.
Put the window down.
Oh, that's a newer one. It's a 1913. That might be the newest one on the whole line. A 111 years old, that bridge. When I was 17, I would ride my dirt bike on this road. Maybe 18. this guy is.
Are we going across this one?
Here, I'll turn and go down there a little bit, just a couple inches.
No, too much mud.
We're just going to get where we can see right here. Another 1913. This is the bridge that had 20-foot long angle iron hanging out from below it. When the train would go over it, they would bounce 3 or 4 feet. We've climbed to the top of that one and played on it. This is the area we've been elk hunting mostly in the last 5 years. North of here, up on the mountain range. See that road back there on the left, went up at an angle. It meets up with this guy here. That's where I put my very first tent in my new truck a few years ago. What a great view of the river. I'm going to pull over because we're holding up traffic.
Yeah.
The van full of illegal brush pickers. Fresh trees down on the tracks.
How much longer to the covered bridge?
I don't know. Doesn't seem like it's very much further.
Pavement.
It's probably a mile. think this is our second to last crossing. Those trees are so big. Those were like little tiny trees. Those were like fence post sized trees when I was a kid. It was like brush. Wow, when those break off and fall into water, this road's gonna have a problem. I think that was the last time we crossed the tracks. Now a train bridge, of course, will take the rails across the water up here. When I was about 5 years old, we had moved to Oregon but didn't have our permanent house yet. And a piece of property came up for sale. I think it was right up here. And we drove out here as a family of 7. I think Alice was born that year. Yeah, Alice would have been born because it was early summer. And it was a place like this is what I remember. It was just like fairly small on the side of the road. And the train tracks would have been, down the hill behind the house. And we looked it over and Dad was saying, I could see this working with a shop right over here. And Mom was saying, there's no place for a garden and the railroad tracks are too close. And there's no backyard for the kids to play in. And the decision was made, no. But I believe that was somewhere up in here. I'll have to ask Mom. That one finally went down. somewhere around just after I got out of high school, they put in a new bridge here and named it for that cool little old man that lived on the 126 end of the bridge. His name was Chesterton Richardson. He was an old military guy, had hundreds of guns in his house, under every couch cushion, in every corner, in the ceiling, hidden. He had so many guns and just loved guns and to talk about guns. And if you could stand the cigarette smoke, that was the place to learn about guns. They built a bridge. The state built a bridge over the river, named it after him. I don't know why they put a bridge here. The old road worked just fine. Not sure what, here's the bridge. Not sure why or how they justified paying it off. But here we are, continuing along Stagecoach Road, headed for home. Now this is, you'll see some rough neighborhood I was talking about. These people made their own bridge across, or gate across the road at one point. This little sign says they have 24-hour surveillance cameras watching that precious piece of ground such that nobody would foul it in some manner. I guess they're out protecting their environment, one patch of grass at a time. See a yurt down there. This half the road has not been maintained as well. I mean, it looks good to me right now, but it's been so riddled with potholes that I've chosen not to drive on it. There's the only restroom. Isn't this something? Look at this drop off. It makes you want to drive very fast.
Why would it do that?
Thrill. I was saying that there was going to be a bridge carrying the tracks across the river. That's quite a ways up here. Look at this tree. It's got the power lines bent down. Goodness, that must have just happened. These people must be in the dark right now. Oh, look at that. We got a wild turkey running down the road in front of us. Look at that thing go. Looks like Emily. I haven't been down here in a while. I didn't even know about that house. Look at this gate. See what I'm saying? Gate ahead, 500 feet. And there's the gate. There was a forest fire. I don't remember what year anymore. Maybe a year after Annabelle was born. Burned this all down, burned it really bad. A lot of this area too. Burned it really bad. That's when the gates went in. And then probably 2 years later, when the soil stabilized, then the landslides were cleaned up and the gates were open. Wow, this is the best I've seen this road in many years. Pump, shower.